This is a split call. The first call goes to the Greens. Eugenie Sage.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, thank you. If New Zealanders thought it was such a good idea that they should have to buy assets that they already own and pay twice through their and their parents' and grandparents' taxes for the infrastructure that the SOEs have built up, the dams, the hydro generation capacity, and then pay again to get shares in the assets that the government is now selling, we wouldn't need a massive PR and advertising campaign to try and convince the public that it makes any kind of economic sense. Mr Speaker, government members are scared. They are scared of what is happening in Europe. They are scared that in the middle of a global recession that they will get so little from the sell-down of our energy companies that they will have created an even worse economic mess. They are scared that they won't be able to spend up large and underwrite irrigation schemes that they've been promising agribusiness and the construction industry. But most of all, Mr Speaker, they are scared that New Zealanders will tire of their stunted economic thinking. They are scared because most New Zealanders oppose asset sales. Most New Zealanders know that it doesn't make sense to sell these strategically important and highly profitable assets. That's why, Mr Speaker, tens of thousands of New Zealanders are signing on to the petition to get a referendum on these asset sales. And that's why, Mr Speaker, the government is spending $120 million, and some of that is going to organisations and companies like Clemenger BBDO and Senate Communications to run a public relations and spin campaign to try and persuade Kiwis that it's a good idea. Mr Speaker, the expertise in our state-owned energy companies could be the cornerstone of a cleaner, a smarter and robuster economy. It could help New Zealand lead rather than lag in the race for green growth. As the recent Pure Advantage report noted, many OECD countries are demonstrating the link between green growth and strong economic performance. To quote the report, countries all over the world are investing in green development to help their economies transition to more robust, sustainable and economically benign platform, end quote. But not in New Zealand, Mr Speaker. No, under this government we lag behind both in our environmental indicators and the government seeking economic nirvana through dinosaur thinking of the last century of intensive resource exploitation. We're seeing that this week with the aerial surveys over the South West World Heritage Area to find mineral resources. Mr Speaker, we have the resources in Aotearoa, we have the expertise and the experience in producing renewable power, in managing grid systems which supply renewable energy. The government is selling our best opportunity to become large-scale exporters of renewable energy technology. And that's because, Mr Speaker, that under this bill there will be no statement of intent provided to the companies by ministers, no principle of social responsibility, no ability for government ministers to influence and direct the companies towards cleaner energy technologies and to have an operating strategy that benefits New Zealand's overall energy strategy and mix. Worse still, Mr Speaker, this bill will make our debt problems worse. The government says that it has an expectation that no more than 10 to 15% of the shares in these companies, that is 20 to 30% of the shares they want to sell, would end up in foreign ownership. But that's $2 billion more foreign ownership, $2 billion more on our net international liabilities. We already send about $10 billion a year overseas in profits to the owners of our companies and to our foreign debtors. Selling our energy companies to foreign owners will only make that worse. And Mr Speaker, even on the very conservative numbers provided by the government, about $100 million a year in profits will flow offshore. That's $100 million a year that we'll have to make up for by borrowing or selling more assets. Mr Speaker, there were amendments suggested in the committee stages that would have put a fence around foreign owners and investors buying these assets. Those amendments were sensible. They were opposed. So, Mr Speaker, there is nothing in this bill that ensures that Kiwis get the major stake in these assets. And that's because, Mr Speaker, the government knows that Kiwis can't afford to pay a gain for what they already own, and so that they need to sell to overseas buyers. Mr Speaker, if the government and its support partners were serious about these assets sales being an opportunity for Kiwis to invest, then they would have supported those amendments. Mr Speaker, we oppose this bill. Tens of thousands of New Zealanders oppose it and are standing up for Aotearoa and a better economic future.
Moana Maki.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We often have